They destroyed things here, broke window, a mess, but things don't matter to me. But seeing the traumatic effect it had on my staff is something that will linger with me forever, and for which I will never forgive them. That these young people come here idealistic, patriotic, civic-minded, to be subjected to hiding under desks in the dark for hours, silent, while they're pounding on doors, not just my staff, but other staff. That to me, we sign up for this, I get threats all the time. That's my way of life. But despite the insurrection that was incited by the President of the United States, we came back, we fulfilled our responsibility. They failed in stopping certification of a President of the United States, and they did so because the members had the courage to come back. This is all about the courage of the members. I'm so proud of them.
Trauma, like any trauma, impacts different people in different ways and on different timelines. So in some ways, just keeping busy and just my work has allowed me to stay focused on what I need to do. But that, may have deferred also my internal processing of this issue too. So I think that'll happen over time. There's no, as the saying goes, there's no going home. Right? When I went to war, when I came back, I was a different person. And in some ways, it's the same here. There was a loss of innocence for many of us, a loss of security, and it was the day that you saw incredible courage and bravery and people doing amazing things from those officers that stood in the breach and bought us very valuable time, that gave their lives to hold back that mob. I think they saved lives. I think they saved lives of members of Congress and helped preserve our democracy and allowed us to do the certification later that day. Similarly, I think they'll see how fragile our democracy can be. That at the end of the day, our democracy is not just a bunch of processes and agencies and bureaucratic procedures, but it's people. It's just people that decide whether or not they're going to uphold it and do their job or not. It is both a day that brought into great contrast both the best of us and some of the worst of us. And I think that there's humility to be found in both of those things.
In fact, in the days leading up to the 6th, my wife expressed concern that I not return to the Capitol. Her feeling was I might not be safe there, given the reports of a gathering that had been called by the president. I convinced her that I would have sufficient security and I would take sufficient precautions to be safe, but she was still very anxious, and so what happened was not out of the expected. My operations guy texted me that the protesters had entered the Capitol.
Protesters are in the building.
And so I left the Senate chamber, where I encountered Officer Goodman, who suggested I return to the chamber because that would be the safest place. Not terribly long after that, a official came into the chamber and said, "You need to evacuate." And that's when I was most frustrated and angry. Angry at those who had gone along with the big lie and told the American people that the election had been stolen. I pointed to a couple of people who had participated in that ruse and said, "You have caused this." I hope that I and others who come here will remember that when we succumb to untruths as a nation, that it can lead to violence and even death, as it did. And I have encouraged the architect of the Capitol to maintain some of the broken glass and other damaged elements of the Capitol so that it will be kept in memory for visitors for not just the near term, but for centuries from now.
I got in my car at about 7, couldn't sleep, drove down to Washington, got on the floor of the Senate at 1 p.m. First time as putative majority leader. Was there for less than an hour when all of a sudden a police officer with a big bulletproof vest and a submachine gun across his waist grabs me firmly by the collar. I'll never forget that feel. And he says, "We're in danger." We go out the door, Senate chamber door, turn to the right, walking briskly with 2 police officers, go through the door, and then 10 seconds later you could see us running out the other way. We were within 30 feet of these insurrectionists. If one of them had a gun, or two of them had run ahead and blocked off the door, and I might not be telling you this story this day, and it was the best of times, majority leader, it was the worst of times, insurrection in the Capitol. But I'll never forget what happened. And every so often I'm sitting at my desk and I look a little bit in the aisle, that center aisle, and I remember the police officer right there. The democracy is vital to us and maybe sometimes more fragile than we think, and we better strengthen it.
The House will be in order.
There was chaos and pandemonium on the floor. People trying to put on gas masks and figure out how they work. I remember clearly the sound of the battering ram up against the door. I remember seeing members removing their congressional pins so as not to be recognized. And I remember some harsh words being spoken between the two sides. It was a tough night. I hope people will remember with some solemnity the fragility of democracy. At the same time, I hope people remember the courage and resiliency of the people who are here, the Capitol officers who risked their lives to defend us, the staff members who saved the Electoral College votes and kept everything going, and the members who refused to back down to fascist-style insurrection in the heart of the Republic. And people should remember that Vice President Pence, on that day, did not back down to the threats from Donald Trump.
It's an image that nobody's ever seen, not even in the Civil War, the Confederate flag flying inside the Capitol. Seeing that man strut about like that, proudly thinking he had a right to be there, just pisses the hell out of me. There were way, way, way more people inside the building than I thought initially when I ran down the steps. Because at that moment, I thought it was 15, 20 guys. Had no idea what the West Front looked like, had no idea that it was overrun. Because I was in the middle of covering, what was going on inside the chamber, that I slowly realizing that, oh, it's not just 10 guys. It's, oh my God, they're all over the rotunda. Oh my God. Where are the cops? They're inside the chamber. That moment, slowly coming to realization, like, it's not a good place to be. Every time I walk up those steps that Goodman pulled the mob away from, I think about it. I feel like I'm bonded to those stairs, because I'm always going to think about him running up and me trying barely to keep up ahead of him. That was kind of the first moment where everything kind of went wrong.
I think the moment whenever it was all over, the insurrection was all over, and I got to sit down and really reflect on what happened. I think that sticks with me the most. I felt sad, anger, there were a lot of emotions going through my mind. I'm still trying to process it. So I still have moments where I get really upset, and I hope they'll remember how hard we fought and the bravery of the officers that were here.
The crowd is using munitions against us.
Probably what sticks with me the most, and there were many, but what sticks with me the most is inside the Lower West Terrace door. The lock got breached, and I don't know, maybe it was 60 or 70 of us trying to just keep them from getting in through the door. And it literally and figuratively, it was forever. I mean, it was just pushing, pulling, fighting. I couldn't get that close because at that point I was tackled, and they stole my helmet, took my helmet. They tried to get my gas mask. It was all these surreal things, like, this cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. This cannot be happening. But it was. I have moments. It comes back in like flashes, and it's hard to not have it with you every day. For those of us that work at the Capitol still, we're still working at our crime scene.
beginning of the day, it was shock just seeing just that mass and that wave of people on the West Front. I mean, no matter who you were that day, you know, we were terrified. We were like, you know, how are we going to beat 40,000 people with the manpower we have? And then as soon as they started breaching the building, and you hear over the radio, the 1033s was our distress code. You know, officer in trouble, officer down, officer needs assistance, officer hurt. You just get angry, and I think if you were fighting that day, I don't think this will ever feel normal. Every time I was still walk in here, I think, okay, you know, that's where this happened, and I can't get, you know, it's hard to get that out of your mind because it was such a traumatic experience for a lot of people. A lot of people are saying that, you know, we failed because, you know, they got in the building, and I think my biggest thing is that people take away from it is the Capitol Police and the entities that came in. We didn't fail. We protected every member of Congress. Not one member of Congress was hurt with a scratch that day. We protected every staffer that was in here. Everybody was accounted for. Nobody was hurt. The only casualties we had were, you know, obviously officers. But at the end of the day, we did our job.
We were locked in here, and I heard people, you couldn't see it, but I heard people running back and forth. That was kind of like, okay, this is really going down. We have people that breached the building, and they're running the installation amok, doing anything that they want. So that was the only point that I was scared when I was in this locker room, hunkered down, and when I heard police officers running back and forth and grabbing people and IDing them. Some people didn't belong here. I was scared then. It could have been a lot worse, and I'm glad that it wasn't, and I'm kind of over it, but not over it, and I keep a vigilant eye, too. I keep an eye out all the time.
The emotion that sticks with me the most is a combination of fear and anger. The anger arises from the audacity, the unmitigated gall these people had to lay siege to the seat of our democracy and put us in this precarious position. I saw them in Statuary Hall, like walking through this hallowed place of democracy, and just seeing these sycophants here, armed and dangerous. And I think that moment truly, for lack of a better term, brought it home. It just terrified me.
I thought this place was so much safer than it was. I don't know that I'll ever be able to walk through those halls and just be like, oh, you know, whatever. You're very conscious. I'm Latina, and I grew up seeing Venezuela's government just like fall apart. And then to see that here, horrible. I mean, just that's how fragile our democracy is. And so I hope that through these pieces that just kind of humanize what happened, it gives people perspective as to how important it is to be mindful of the leaders you elect.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.